Louisiana has a new voice to champion poetry and the power of words. Gina Ferrara, a New Orleans native and an associate professor of English at Delgado Community College, has been named the state's newest Poet Laureate. In her new role, Ferrara hopes to empower communities across Louisiana to embrace poetry, not as a riddle to solve, but as a shared experience that celebrates language, culture, and imagination. We are here at Delgado Community College, and I am joined by Louisiana's newest Poet Laureate, Gina Ferrara. She is a professor of English here at Delgado Community College, and we caught up with you before you were about to teach some of your classes.
That's right.
So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So tell us how this came about.
Well, it came about, there's usually a kind of a process every 2 years where there's kind of a call for a Poet Laureate of the state, and you need to be nominated. This isn't my first time. I had been nominated previously, but this is my first time, of course, being laureate.
Why do you want to serve as Louisiana's Poet Laureate?
Oh, well, I'm a New Orleans native. I mean, I've lived in the state, the city, all of my life, and so much of what we have here appears in my poetry. I like writing about Louisiana. I feel very comfortable doing that since I've lived here all my life. And I like the idea of really kind of empowering people and letting them find their voices. I do that here at Delgado, and I think I can certainly do that throughout the state.
What drew you to poetry? Of all the things you could do in the world, why this?
Well, when I was a young girl, I had an uncle who was in the Army, and he was stationed in Germany. And my grandmother made us write letters to him every day. And she said, I want him to feel like he's in the room with us. So I really had to kind of focus on specific details in those letters. And I think that kind of principle, or that kind of that instruction from my grandmother is ultimately what led me to poetry.
So what is your focus as Louisiana Poet Laureate?
My focus is going to be bringing poetry to different communities. Of course, here in New Orleans and throughout the state, I want people to develop the same appreciation for poetry that I have. That's quite simply my mission. My game plan is to really look at, to go to different communities, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, smaller towns, and do poetry readings there, to do poetry workshops there. Since 2007, I've curated something called the Poetry Buffet here in New Orleans, and that features the work of maybe 3 to 4 poets. It happens once a month, usually at a library, and I kind of want to bring the Poetry Buffet, I want to make it a movable feast in the state of Louisiana.
Any other plans that you have?
Other plans might be to do workshops with maybe communities that are somewhat remote or somewhat isolated. A long time ago, I wrote a book, and it was based on Carville, Louisiana. And so I kind of, that whole idea of communities in isolation, or communities that maybe aren't kind of totally integrated into society, that's something that interests me also.
Now, was this a book of poetry, or was this
It was a book of poetry, and it was based on patients who lived in Carville.
What do you want viewers to understand about the power of poetry?
I think poetry sometimes has this reputation, and I think people sometimes are afraid of poetry because they're afraid that they're not going to get the right meaning behind it. They're afraid that it's maybe too much of a riddle. And I want people to lose their fear. I want people to really welcome poetry, kind of how it uses language and imagery. And There are no wrong answers in poetry. That's always what I tell my students, and that's certainly what I would tell the people of Louisiana.
Gina Ferrara, Louisiana's next Poet Laureate, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to your poetry buffets as they travel around the state of Louisiana.
Thank you so much.